What's up, party people? Welcome back to the studio. My name is Brian. I am your host for this project, and this month I've got a wild journey that we're going to go on together. I think there are two types of people in the world, or at least people who exist on one of two ends of a spectrum. On one end, you have people who get an idea for a project and they methodically research it. They break it down into discrete and actionable steps. They set milestones along the way, and through effort, they're able to achieve their goal and bring their idea to reality. My brother and sister are those kinds of people. I, however, am on the other end of the spectrum. I am more of what I call a notioner. I get an idea, a notion, and without really researching it or methodically planning it, I am compelled to bring it into reality. It all starts with a project that I am making as part of a larger video collaboration with the friends of mine at connect.faith. The theme for that video is going to be joy, and so my charge for this project is to do something around the theme, joy. And my mind eventually went to the Pixar movie Inside Out. If you haven't seen the movie Inside Out, it's ostensibly about a little girl named Riley, but it's told through the perspective of personified emotions in Riley's head that are helping Riley navigate the changes in her world. Our main protagonist is, of course, the character and the emotion joy. And at various points throughout the movie, different emotions have their hands on the wheel, controlling Riley's actions and behaviors. And of course, those actions and behaviors are then highly colored by the emotion in charge. When I started this project, fear was very much in the driver's seat of my emotions, because the most logical thing for me to do would be to start with the epoxy pour. The epoxy that I ordered takes 5 to 10 days to cure, and this video has a hard deadline that is fast approaching. But allowing fear to stay in the driver's seat, I actually started with some other parts of the project. So while this is the first part of the project you're seeing, I've actually been working on it for 2 weeks on some less time-sensitive pieces of the project. Like I said, there are planners and there are notioners, and I'm a notioner to the core. But I can put it off no longer. Let's get to the epoxy pour. As I mentioned, I am an adult with a credit card and Amazon is a thing, and so now is this silicone brain mold. Silicone releases really well from epoxy, and so while I am terrified of all the ways this could go wrong, it should work. I said that we exist on a spectrum, right? Maybe I'm allowed to do just a skosh of planning. I think instead of starting with some very expensive resin, I'm going to start with water. Give me a minute, hold on. Okay. Let's just see how this mold does. Okay. Oh wait. Okay. Hold on. We need some shims. Let's see. Okay. That was good. Okay. That will totally do. Maybe I could make it just a little more bit. For what I'm trying to achieve, this is perfect. You know, the other thing this lets me do is it lets me know the volume of the brain, which will let me be much more precise with how much epoxy I need. Yeah. Oh, that went well. Oh yeah, I'll call that a win. Just under 3 cups of epoxy. So let me go ahead and reset this little experiment and we'll get on to the epoxy pour. I'm going to be using Total Boat's thick-set Fathom epoxy for this project. Now, I'm not one of those makers fortunate enough to be sponsored by Total Boat, but it's a good product and it's what I have on hand. Now, for the Fathom epoxy, this is a very small pour for this type of medium. I'm really supposed to be doing pours no smaller than about 1 gallon, and I'm not quite doing a full quart. However, thick-set Fathom epoxy is able to be poured up to 3 inches deep in casts like this. I'm trading off some cure time for the fact that I can do this all in one pour. I have a feeling that throughout this process, I'm going to go through the full complement of emotions. Definitely am afraid about how this is going to turn out. I can see myself getting really sad here before too long, probably then followed by anger and all of the stupid little things that I could have done to make this better. Will I get back to joy? One can hope, you know? One can certainly hope. Whoa! I may have gone too far. Okay, I'm gonna call it. I think that's all there is to it. I went down to the lumber yard and picked up some walnut to work on the base. My vision was just a simple box with a rabbit cut in it to hold a piece of acrylic that all of the characters in the diorama would sit on and separate it from the lights underneath. That joined up pretty quickly with simple miters and that rabbit, and I started to feel real sadness because I felt like I was an imposter. This was a very simple construction. I wasn't bringing my full skill set as a maker and a woodworker, and so I went back to the drawing board and started trying to do some splines out of oak into the mitered corners. Very quickly in the process, my emotions shifted from sadness to disgust. I never felt unsafe using the table saw to cut the splines, but I hadn't built a jig and I wasn't doing it the right way, the way that I know I was supposed to. And then the cuts were a little bit uneven and I went back to file them with a file and I didn't spend the time to get it as flat as I could. And the splines in the end really added to the overall look of the box. And I'm sure it looks great on camera, but it's not perfect, and if I had to do it again, there are things that I learned that would make me much better at adding splines to mitered corners in the future. But I had a box, and you know, I was kind of proud of it. It turned out better than I thought. So I came back inside, and this would have been the second best time to kick off the epoxy pour for the brain because I still had a deadline that I was trying to meet, but fear had one hand on the wheel, and so I kept that off to the side and turned my attention instead to the electronics component to build the lights that'll go underneath the base. It's not an overly complex electronics project as far as electronics go, but I was using some things that I had never used before. And it's at this point in my script that I am supposed to say that anger took over. But you know, it wasn't really anger. It was just some frustration. I never once felt like I wanted to hurl this thing off of the edge of the desk. I was enjoying it. It was a challenge and I was learning. In the end, I had a string of LEDs that were controlled by the microcontroller, and I even got the RFID reader to work. So now if I take an RFID tag with the emotion joy and set it on the reader, all of the lights will glow yellow, joy's color. If I take a different emotion, say our friend disgust here, and I place her and her tag on the reader, they turn green. And at the end of it, even though, yes, I was frustrated and angry through some of the process, what I felt most was pride. So here it is. It is all done. It's been about 2 weeks since I poured the epoxy for the brain, and when I demolded it, it came out so much better than I had hoped. In the intervening 2 weeks, I rewatched Inside Out. And it's a Pixar movie, so of course, they handled the subject of these emotions with so much complexity and nuance, way more than you would think just reading the description. Throughout the movie, Joy had to learn that she shouldn't be protecting Riley from anger or disgust, from sadness or fear, that all of the emotions played a role in making Riley who Riley was. And when I think back on this project, it was the same for me. I felt so much joy as I was building this, not because I never felt a moment of anger or disgust, of sadness or fear, but because through it all, through the anger, through the sadness, I was trying something new, I was learning new skills, and I was doing the thing that I love the most, taking an idea and making it into a reality. We live in an incredibly volatile world. There is so much to be angry about, to be scared about, to be sad about, to be disgusted about. And yet through it all, there is so much to be joyful for. There is joy in the fact that people are using their anger to make real and lasting change. There is joy in the fact that people are using their sadness and their fear to make art and poetry and tell stories of hope that point to the promise of what's in the future. There's joy that people are using their disgust to make themselves better people. There's so much to be joyful about, not despite what's happening in the world, not despite the emotions it engenders, but all in and through it. And I want to acknowledge that sometimes the correct reaction to what happens in the world is anger, not a joyous anger, but anger. But there are also times when it is important to step back and to see the anger in context, the anger as a catalyst of change, and that is a joyous thing. And so as I think about my next chapter, that's my hope. My hope is that I am able to channel those emotions, to give them a voice, to give them space and room, but to remember that through it all, there is joy to be found. And so as ever, I wish that you will be well, you will try hard, and you will do good. It was the Onceler from Dr. Seuss's The Lorax who said, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing's going to get better. It's not. I love you. I'll see you next time.